welcome to On the Road, where we interview interim managers of surgical services, interim sterile processing managers, and interim OR educators, ideas, innovations, and insights from their interim practice. Today's guest is Jeff O'Brien. Jeff has served as interim manager of surgical services at a variety of different hospitals all across the country for a variety of different firms. Jeff has his bachelor's degree. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
So, Jeff, you have been a interim for a long time, and you've been a consultant also. Tell us a little bit about what made you choose this lifestyle.
When I decided to go on the road and travel and consult, I knew it was time because I outgrew my local area. I worked in a lot of facilities locally back in my home state of Oregon. I would climb the ranks from a tech to a lead tech to a manager, supervisor, educator, and I wanted to know what was next. Where can I go? So I reached out to a few of my contacts, started interviewing for traveling positions, and it opened up a lot of doors for me, and I've been happy since, and I've been doing it for well over 10 years, traveling specifically.
That's great. That's fascinating. So 10 years. 10 years ago, you said, I need to expand my horizons a little bit. I'm a little limited in provincial Portland, Oregon. But for someone that wants to do what you have done, what advice would you have for them to prepare them for it? For example, have you had downtime in between contracts or not really much at all? What have you had to give up to be a road warrior?
Sure. So yes, I there are some downtimes. The longest downtime I've had was about 4 months. The quickest turnaround between contracts was a weekend. I would go home and change my clothes from a luggage from a winter state to a summer state. So I would switch out my attire and then get back on the road again. But it's been as long as 4 months. So you have to be prepared for the storms. You're not always consistently working, which is a challenge, but it's allowed me to expand and create a greater network. And to this day, I have people who ask me, how do I get into what I do and how do I become traveling? And my advice would be, one, create a savings account if you don't already have it, because some of the expenses are up front. But two, be prepared to have downtime, and what will you do in that downtime? And some of the sacrifices for me was family. I started traveling when my kids were a little bit younger. I have two teenage daughters, and it became a challenge knowing that their dad wasn't always going to be home. So I gave up the sacrifice of my family, but it provided for us to have a better financial means.
Terrific. That's fascinating. I especially like what you said about savings account. Some of the costs are front end loaded. I don't think that people know that. So that's really good
Right.
advice. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Now your resume shows consultant and it also shows interim manager. What's the difference?
So interim manager usually the day-to-day operations, making sure that you have staffing, policies, procedures are good, and making sure that you're hiring people or terminating people if that's what's needed. Consulting is more of the coming in, looking for opportunities, fixing certain processes, ensuring that the standards are being followed, and then making recommendations based on my findings, whether it be maybe adapting some policies or changing the policies or completely wiping off the flow in the process. Decontamination has bottlenecks, or we don't have everybody that we want on the processing side when we need them. Are the people here at the right times doing the right jobs? So consulting is more of the let me observe, let me watch, make some assessments, and then give you opportunities on how to fix those assessments. And now oftentimes being a consultant, you can be hired on to do implementations, which is implementing those assessments that you had found and creating the opportunities for the better workflow.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's fascinating. So when you are brought in as an interim, many times it's because the hospital or surgery center is doing a search for the full-time permanent person to come in. If that person with a good handoff, you say hello to that person and then you're out the door. What advice do you have for the newly hired interim SPD manager? What's the advice that you give the person that comes in and fills your shoes?
So if I'm interim handing off to a full-time person, if that's the question, then my advice is, one, Here's what we started with. These are my observations. These were the corrections that I've made. Here's how I got the buy-in from the group or the team. And then consult and hand off to where they're successful. Preferably, I work with administration to allow that handoff to be at least 30 days. If it's less than that, then there's going to be a lot of slide back. Oh, we have a new manager, we have a new director. We're not going to do it the way that the consultant had told us to do it or the interim manager told us to do it. We're going to go back to our old ways. And so to ensure that happens, you have to have a really good handoff, which is the question. But that has to be at least 30 days with us, me working with you, introducing you to the key players, taking you to the meetings, the important meetings, any kind of lean projects where that might hand off from, what we can do to make it more efficient. So the handoff itself is going to be a lot of open communication between the two, letting them see and introduce themselves to the key players and kind of letting them fly while I'm there to help them so there's no slide back from the staff saying we're not going to do it this way.
You said a term I want to explore a little bit further. You said the term important meetings. Are there certain meetings that the SPD, whether it's interim or permanent, SPD lead is not often invited to that you say, whoa, I want to be invited to that meeting? Is there an example of one of those?
Yes, a couple of examples. One is value analysis. Oftentimes, central processing is forgotten about to where the OR will purchase a new tray, a new technology. Administration is supportive of, let's say, a robot service, and they didn't consult with the sterile processing department. We aren't sure that we can have the capacity with our equipment. We may not have the right amount of trays. Do they need to be containerized? What are the IFUs, and how do we follow those? So oftentimes value analysis is that entry meeting of bringing something in new for the first time, and we need to be there at those gates. That's one example. Another example would be sometimes with administration on a director level. I've had to give presentations to the C-suite about our process improvements, how we're going to save some money on costs. There's cost savings based on labor initiatives. So meeting with the C-suite, if that's an opportunity, if the structure supports that, or the OR director or whoever the SPD manager or director would report to, that would be a very important meeting to be invited to as well. And other meetings are more just process improvements with perioperative services. Maybe there's a meeting that there's a coordinators meeting or a levels meeting that the SPD people need to be involved with because we impact their product at the end of the day for the patient. If we're not there and there's maybe issues about holes or bioburden or whatever that might be, if we're not at the table at the time, then we can't either one defend or improve the processes. So that's also another important meeting that the central processing manager or director needs to be a part of as well.
Great, great. That's a terrific answer. Thank you. And when you're interviewing with, let's just say, the chief nursing officer, because she wants a new interim SPD manager, what questions do you ask? What KPIs do you ask about to understand how the SPD department is running?
So for clarification, what would I ask the CNO if I'm meeting with the CNO? What questions would I ask of her if I'm coming on for the first time or to take over a department?
To get what KPIs would you ask about of that chief nursing officer to get a feel for how the SPD department is doing?
The first most important question is, what are your current issues? Oftentimes they've been involved with the process where they're like, we have overtime all the time, we need to cut our costs, or we have bioburden and holes or tears, we have delayed cases. So getting down to what their current processes are, then I know what questions to ask the staff if I'm brought on site, or what resources I need to bring to the table, what tools for my toolbox do I bring that will allow me to be successful for that department or that facility, because each facility in its own right is the same, but yet very, very different. So I often ask the questions about the department. Are there broken relationships? How is the reaction? How are the relationships with the OR? Because we need to be married. We're not two isolated departments. What are our relationships with any other external customers? And then just about flow and operations.
Great, great. Going now to that same conversation. So the chief nursing officer says, Jeff, we would like to have SPD do what they can to improve our first case on time starts. How can sterile processing help?
Absolutely. That is a great question. Oftentimes, Central is a main reason why first cases are delayed due to instrumentation turnover times. So, what I would offer is looking at our processes, looking at our inventory of instrument sets, looking at what cases are scheduled. Are we utilizing our block times appropriately? Are there things that we can put in between two knees, between the second knee and the third knee, so we have time for turnover if the vendor trays did not bring enough sets? So I look at it as an opportunity as, okay, all of the things that Central does, providing a service to the OR and to more importantly, the patient, what is our stream and what is our flow, and where are we going to have problems to get the instrumentation to the ORs timely enough? And maybe it's the delivery of the instruments. Maybe we're doing it too early or too late in the day that the nurse doesn't have enough inventory to complete their cases for later that day, that they're stealing from previous cases that are already picked. So it's just looking at the timeline as well for prompt delivery.
It sounds like you're really using critical thinking skills to think on the fly as to how you could provide value and how you could help there. How about growing volume? Same question. So if a CNO says our volume's down.
Okay, and that is challenging from the Central's perspective on helping to grow with the growth, because we're not the ones who are reaching out to the new physicians. Hey, come work at our facility. We're not the ones who are talking to the existing physicians like, okay, how can I help you get more volume? But the way we do it behind the scenes is more efficiency work. Do we have enough inventory? If you're adding on three more cases at the end of the day, can we turn over the instruments we have? Do we need to purchase new? Are we utilizing the instruments within the sets appropriately? Do we have too much instruments inside there? So instead of it taking 3 hours to turn over an instrument set, it takes longer because there's more instruments to be cleaned, or the instrumentation itself is complex. If it could also lead to an opportunity leading to a conversation with administration. Our equipment is outdated. Our washers can only do X capacity. It's too small. We need to grow. We need a second cart wash or a third cart wash or a fourth washer. We need an extra ultrasonic machine. So a lot of times how we help with growth is realizing where our underutilization is with our equipment. How can we max produce? Because at the end of the day, we are kind of a assembly line format. It's mass production with high quality.
That's great. So in other words, it sounds to me like SPD can really help with the efficiency and thereby fit more volume in throughout the day. Tell me this. So you're from Portland. Where are you found in between interim jobs? What do you do in between your contracts?
Absolutely. I love the state of Portland. I really didn't come to, I mean, it's the state of Oregon, Portland, Oregon, but I did not come to love that until I traveled away from there. I really appreciated it after I was in California for a while. The color, the quality of the air, it's just different. And it's not that California is bad. They have a lot of great things to offer. So I didn't really appreciate things until I left home. But when I'm off contract, I'm usually in Oregon, enjoying whatever season it might be at the time. We have all 4 seasons, but I like to go to the beaches. I like to play at the casinos. I like to watch movies, spend time with my family, my friends. They're important to me. They give me the ability to kind of rest my head during in between contracts. So you can find me pretty much anywhere. It's warm but not hot. A little bit of rain is nice, but not where it's a downpour. So somewhere in between, with friends, with family, loved ones, support.
Well, that's terrific. And you sort of answered my next question, which is what do you do for stress relief? It sounds like you get out and you visit and you go to the casinos and you have fun and you sound like you really enjoy life in Portland.
Absolutely. I everybody asks me when I'm on an assignment and I'm by myself. I've left everybody behind to do what I need to do. Everybody asks me, how do you do that? How do you go out and about? And how do you do these things? I said, I'm an extrovert. I like to meet with people. I like to interact. You can find me at a restaurant and I will pick up a conversation with somebody at the table next door just because we happen to overhear the conversation, or they may have said something about my home state. I'm like, oh, I'm an expert. I can tell you something. Where would you like to go? Make recommendations. But I'm very extroverted. My last weekend, it was my weekend not home. So I went and traveled 3 northern states on the east side. So I checked off 3 more states that I haven't seen as part of my bucket list to see all 50 states.
Wow. Okay. Well, I got to ask, how many states are behind you now, and how many states have you not been to so far?
I have traveled to 40 of the 50 states. I have 10 left to go.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, give us a few examples. Where haven't you been yet?
I haven't been to mostly the central North America. So North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas. Let's see what else. I've been in the southern region. So I've hit Texas. I've hit Louisiana, Oklahoma. I've been there. So Nebraska is one that I need to go to. Again, North Dakota, South Dakota, Alaska. So there's a few still left to see and venture out and explore.
That's terrific. And that answers the obvious question. If you want to recruit Jeff O'Brien, you should come armed with a contract in the Dakotas or Alaska or Nebraska. You'll probably get his attention. That's terrific. Jeff, thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
That concludes today's episode of On the Road. Jeff, thanks again for your insights. If you're a hiring manager and want to meet Jeff or another interim road warrior, please call me at 503-866-9497. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.